Hello team and welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. This is Ukraine War news update, first part thereof for the 9th of December 2023. No football for my son today. It's been hammering it down for a couple of days. The pitches are waterlogged. It's horrible out there, so stay in here, drink tea, talk Ukraine. We'll go to where we normally start. Ukrainian General Staff figures for the Russian losses for the day before. All the usual caveats apply, and you can find them in the description to the video below. What do we have? About 900 personnel lost. That is high, but we can see a drop in a number of the categories in the statistics today because I think weather has been pretty bad. From what I can gather, there's been a downtick in activity along the front line. So 90% of the activity in the Tavria front is taking place in Avdiivka and Mariinka, apparently, and a lot of activity isn't taking place because weather is bad. So 900 personnel is still fairly high, but 6 tanks, 11 APVs and 1 artillery system is low. As I've said many times before, if you can't get drones up in the air because of wind, because of rain, because of cloud cover, then you can't use kamikaze drones, you can't spot for artillery, you can't spot for gimlers, and MLRS, you can't drop IEDs on people's heads and whatnot. So drones are such an integral part of this war that if you can't use drones due to, in this case, weather, then you can't do war, or at least effectively. 14 cruise missiles, that's not from last night. A quiet night as far as missiles and Shaheeds are concerned, as far as I can work out. 7 vehicles and fuel tanks is a really low number for that category. So yeah, a quiet day comparatively speaking. Not a quiet day as far as looking at the socials are concerned, because there is often a lag between, or always some kind of lag between activity taking place, drones doing their stuff, and then the videos coming online. Andrew Perpetua, the mapper, has looked at these and totted up what he has found over the last 24 hours. And you can see that there is a, goodness me, I don't know, maybe a 6-to-1 ratio of Russian losses to Ukrainian losses, something like that. So a very good day for the Ukrainians in terms of equipment lost. Well, let's look at Ukrainians. A couple of tanks, a couple of BTRs, pickup truck. That's that. Tanks are T-64s, so they're older tanks. Not too much of a worry there for the Ukrainians. For the Russians, we have 2 bits of surveillance comms equipment, undefined. Engineering vehicle and excavator, Mr. S piece of artillery, a couple of T-72s and another tank, a whole bunch of infantry fighting vehicles, and yet again only 1 BMP on there. So we're seeing a real skew towards later infantry fighting vehicles for all the reasons I've given you on previous days. And then some trucks and civilian vehicles, a lot of civilian vehicles, so logistics being hit hard. That is an awful lot more stuff being lost by the Russians than by the Ukrainians. Okay, what else can we work out that's going on? Well, the ambassador has said that Russia holds 500 Ukrainian medical workers captive. So that is going to have, that's the Ukraine's ambassador to OSCE. Ukraine's going to have a lot of trouble in that domain. The ambassadors called it a violation of the Geneva Convention. So that is, that's a challenge to the Ukrainians. 500 medical personnel will have a knock-on effect to the effectiveness of medevac and Kesvac and whatnot. Okay, this was doing the rounds yesterday, but reportedly a Russian Su-57 stealth fighter. This is a 5th generation fighter. Supposedly on fire in Novosibirsk airport. Russia only has 10 to 20 of these. Not too much footage coming out. And in fact, here, oh no, not here. Where's it gone? There you go, in the wrong place. So here we have the dead district saying, some sources say that the Su-57 caught fire, but it must be the steam and smoke generated by the UMP-350 unified engine heater. Yesterday morning it was very cold in Tolmachevo airport at about minus 37 degrees. That is a very cold morning there, but it's more likely to be an engine heater rather than the plane itself on fire. Nonetheless, we can hope, but hope, unfortunately, doesn't get you too far. Right. There is also a well, this bit of footage was doing around, so I can't show it to you because I'll get hammered for it. However, it's well worth looking at. It's another one of these explosions that has an incredible shockwave that comes off it. It is a TOS-1A thermobaric piece of equipment, piece of artillery getting destroyed, and the explosion is incredible. Really bright explosions. Just before that is a really bright flash, and then this wave, the shockwave that goes out in a dome. However, I think it is not a recent bit of footage. We have seen a number of these before. We haven't seen this particular bit of footage, but I think the understanding is it did. It wasn't from the last 24 hours. So take that on board if you do look at it. And this from Dmitry from War Translated, I think is worth looking at. So Russian combatant volunteer Filatov on Telegram continues covering the first-person view war in Avdiivka and specifically mentions the Russian MOD prioritizes targets that will create, quote, nice content for social media. Okay, and this is the death of someone called X here. This is a commander. Now, we have heard this before. It's not the first time that we have heard they want drone footage. In fact, I think the previous one came from the Kherson area, Dnipro River area, where they're saying that the Russian MOD much prefer things that look good rather than things that have tactical value. Here he says X is dead, so this commander is dead, and this is a loss. The banal feel sorry for everyone doesn't work here. X was to become the commander, strong, angry, proactive, and resilient warrior. We knew him for only 5 days, and during these days, just in terms of working with the drone, he became indispensable to us. We have a rule. Future commander must undergo an assault and hold positions, only then become a commander. Success cannot be achieved if the commander is mother's boy after military college, only after an assault. And the loss of such a warrior as a future commander means future losses of the rank and file due to the lack of strong commanders and the presence of mother's boys with an overestimated self-opinion. Okay, let's unpick that a little bit. First of all, this guy, sorry, I said he was a commander. He's a commander to be. But there is this idea that you need to, and quite rightly so, you need to prove yourself before you get made a commander. There's too much of this commanders coming straight out of military college and not having the first idea of what's going on. But he said he's died before that was able to happen. The death of several of our fighters is due to the FPV management structure. Only the muscular strength of the commanders of the 114th Brigade can force them to spend a few birds on ugly targets. And these are scandals that no one needs. That's why I'm jumping in, because I'm sick of watching this repeating scenario. Our assault forces took the house. We shouted into the radio, send a couple of FPVs to the house where the enemy was holed up, make a hole in the roof. We will finish it later. The answer is silence. Instead, the Ukrainian FPV attacked them, and then several more FPVs methodically finished off our wounded. They will show the video. Thereafter, our blood. Then the Ukrainian tank came, and again our FPV were not there. There's something wrong with them. Then another tank came in, and the death of X, and quote, something happened to this tank. And that's when our PR drones went in the air to finish the tank off. And they couldn't. They lost connection on the final trajectory. The Ukrainian crew left. Only a revision of the distribution, responsibility and reporting of PR project FPV kamikazes purchased with public money can help the front in a qualitative manner. A combat mission is not about developing content, but about promoting infantry, occupying and holding positions. In other words, yet again, it is seen by this person at least that the Russian drones are being used not for tactical advantage, not for tactical reasons such as, supporting infantry, occupying and holding positions, so on and so forth. It is about a PR project, the reporting of a PR project for these FPV drones, and they wouldn't go out to help the infantry take that house. They were waiting for something like the disabled tank, but by the time that they got there, the tank something happened to the drone, and the tank was able to get out, or at least the crew left. I don't know if the tank was able to get out of there. So I think it's an anecdote. Make of it what you will, but I think these kind of reports are not uncommon amongst the Russians. Right, we're going to go to distance strikes, and actually there's nothing to report. It doesn't appear to be any activity last night, which leaves one wondering, do the Russians have all of the missiles that we think they have? What are they doing? What are they waiting for? There was a little snippet on Ukraine the Latest last night where the who was it? One of the reporters on there was saying that they were speaking to some Western officials I don't know whether it's in Brussels at some meeting, some military officials saying they don't have 1,000 missiles. It was just a kind of throwaway comment. So I have no idea the provenance. It was kind of like I was speaking to officials. They said this. We don't know who these officials are, but it's a fairly reputable source. The Ukraine latest podcast, and they do speak to officials. The idea is that they might not have 1,000 missiles like we think they do, stacked up, ready to go. So interesting. Could that be why we're not seeing all these missiles? Because you would have thought we're into December now, and we're into December the 9th. And I've been worrying about these huge strikes on Ukraine. And you'd be thinking, right, if they want to do this, if they want to cripple the energy infrastructure, then they should be doing that now. Right? We're going in, this is winter now. If they're going to have that effect, you would have thought they would have released them. So, okay, well, maybe it's not the energy infrastructure. Maybe it's military targets. But then, well, why not now? Surely, the sooner you hit military targets, the better. If you wait another month, then those military targets can do their military stuff for an extra month. So what is the reason, or what are the reasons that the Russians have not yet done these large-scale winter or autumn-winter attacks? One of the previous reasons was that they were unable to load them on the ships in the Black Sea because the loading facilities are in Sevastopol, and the Russian Black Sea Fleet has moved from Sevastopol to Novorossiysk on the eastern coast of the Black Sea. So, okay, but what about all the planes that shoot their missiles from within Russia? It's not that all the cruise missiles are shot from the Black Sea. I don't know what the stats are, but it's probably going to be something like half of them. What about the rest of them being shot from within Russia? Why haven't we seen them? We saw some the other night for the first time in a long time, but that wasn't like a huge amount. I mean, you're talking, double figures, in the teens. But yeah, I don't know. So let me know what you think. Okay. No report says Russia began regrouping its forces. So onto other bits and pieces because there really isn't a lot to report in the overnight strikes. Russia began regrouping its forces. This may mean that in the coming weeks, even more intensive offensives by Russia may begin in Ukraine, according to the commander of the Estonian Military Intelligence Center, Ants Kiviselg. I can't talk to that really, but it is a view there. We might see an uptick in Russian offensives. Ukrainian military raid, and I reported this yesterday in my frontline update, but it's worth reporting this in the news, that Ukrainian military raids in occupied Crimea will continue, according to the representative of the Ministry of Internal Affairs and Communications. And I was questioning why you would announce this, but there's obviously some PR value in this. Quote, there is public information about several raids. In fact, there were more of them, but we will not reveal all the details yet. We can claim that these are definitely not the last raids in operations, said Yusuf. So we saw a couple of raids of Marines, one presumes, on to the Western Cape, Tarkankut Cape of Crimea, and hit some kind of radar installations possibly. You also had missile hits of S-400s in Crimea. Well, you've had all sorts of strikes in Crimea, but there were these attacks from these Marines and from special forces. Also, the claim is that there are other ones that haven't been reported, so that's interesting. And also, it's the claim that they will continue. Won't say exactly when, obviously, but they will continue. So that's interesting messaging there. Now, this is a fairly big bit of news, possibly the biggest bit certainly the biggest bit of news this morning, if it's true. Now, you don't know whether Russian disinformation is involved in this. You don't know whether you've got people within the Ukrainian administrations, either Zelensky or Zaluzhny's side, having some benefit in announcing this or leaking this. But anyway, rumors about this is from Jason J. Smart, who works, I think, for the Kiev Independent, or was it the Kiev Post? The Kiev Post, actually. Rumors about Zaluzhny's possible resignation have begun spreading in earnest. Insiders believe that Zelensky's office has already decided on a candidate for the new commander of the Ukrainian army and is consulting with Washington about the decision. In Washington's opinion, the results of the counteroffensive did not meet expectations, and most importantly, they were not the plans that Western partners had collaborated with its Ukrainian partners on. The Americans insisted on more unconventional and fresh solutions that would be more powerfully stimulate movement on the front. Despite repeated hints from the US, General Zaluzhny failed to offer fundamentally new ideas and steps, and which ultimately brought the situation on the battlefield to a strategic deadlock. So this isn't from Jason J. Smart. This is a quote from his sources. Tension was added by Zaluzhny's position during Lloyd Austin's last visit to Ukraine, when the commander made obviously exaggerated demands to the allies, including the needs for 17 million shells. The negotiators believed that Zaluzhny could have been deliberately voicing such unrealistic demands, realizing that his partners had no way to meet them, as a means of provoking his own forced resignation. Zaluzhny's recent media activities indirectly indicate that the decision has been made. The publication of a sentimental photo with his wife, I saw that the other day actually, with his rather restrained congratulation on the day of the armed forces of Ukraine, using phrases like, quote, "I will not be ashamed," looked more like a farewell and preparation of public opinion for Zaluzhny's resignation. At the same time, Valery Zaluzhny offered himself a replacement in the form of general and former MP from Poroshenko's party, Mikhailo Zabrodsky. Despite the tense relations between Zelensky's team and Poroshenko, Washington extended an invitation to Zabrodsky to visit the US. So things could well be afoot. I don't know enough about all of this to cast an informed opinion. There is part of me that thinks, well, you don't get off the horse in the middle of crossing the river. So, in the middle of the war here, don't change general, especially when he is pretty popular and appears to have quite a lot of kudos attached to him. However, on the other hand, yes, we're in the middle of the war, but actually this is a relatively quiet part, as in winter between maybe offensives, counter-offensives. I don't know. This is possibly a good time to replace Zaluzhny, and arguably there wasn't a Zaluzhny success with the counter-offensive in terms of territory gained, or certainly on that metric. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not on the ground there. I'm not in a position to know all the ins and outs of what's going on here. It strikes me as a shame, but that could be my bias because I just quite like the guy. Why do I quite like the guy? Because he's had a successful kind of PR project attached to him. Like, he does well in social medias, the way he presents himself, the working with the commanders, you see lots of photos of those photo ops. I like the look of him. All these things are probably going through my head, that he looks like a nice guy. Well, what does that mean? Whatever. So, but all these things are probably acting on my thought processes to think, don't get rid of him. I like Zaluzhny. But actually, is he the best person still in a job? Has he proved himself in the last few months? Or arguments for and against. Again, I'd be really interested to see what you guys think. All right, Russian cities cancel New Year's festivities to fund the war against Ukraine. Several major Russian cities have decided to scrap their traditional New Year's celebrations and use the money to buy military equipment to the Russian troops invading Ukraine. Nothing says military success. Nothing says economic prosperity like stopping celebrations, stopping parties, stopping festivities in your country to fund a war effort. Nothing says a really well-funded war effort like pulling down your New Year's celebrations or stopping them from being put up because you need to fund those troops. And here we have Anton Gerashchenko saying it looks like Russians are facing a large shortage of groceries or even a greater rise in prices, so somewhat connected. Now, a week ago, I didn't show you this, but a week ago, there was this footage coming out to say these were the queues for eggs. There's a poultry shortage in Russia. I didn't report that the other day, but I could have done. There's a poultry shortage, and it looks like egg shortage. In Saratov, Russia, people are standing in large queues for eggs and making large stockpiles of them. They're accusing the city to buy eggs at 86 cents per dozen. Local channels say people are even fighting over eggs sometimes. I presume that is more than they normally pay then. Over the past week, eggs have been breaking the record for inflation. The region has also started selling them by the piece. are the food wars in Russian grocery stores returning, says Gerashenko. That's a week ago. He now says it looks like they are facing large shortage of groceries and even greater rises in prices. Russian Federal Anti-Monopoly Service plans to introduce a ban on increasing food prices in 2024 by more than 30% within 60 days. The corresponding bill, developed on behalf of the Deputy Prime Minister Andrei Belousov, has already been sent to the government. Large companies will be prohibited from raising prices by more than 30% for 60 days without an obvious reason. That is, if they cannot justify the increase with economic factors. Violators will first be given orders. The next step is to initiate a case. The goal is to stabilize food prices in Russia before the elections. The list of goods that the regulator will monitor will also be established by the government. Presumably, these will be most socially significant products: meat, milk, eggs, bread, tea, and others. Moreover, the Anti-Monopoly Service will make a decision on unreasonable price increases based on data from the Ministry of Economic Development, the draft says. I don't know how workable that's going to be. At the same time, almost every fourth large company plans to increase prices to maintain operational efficiency. A new monitoring by the Russian Union of Entrepreneurs shows in just one quarter, their share increased from 13.7% to 23%, becoming the highest since the spring of 2022. With this trend, before the end of the year, almost every company will raise prices. Among small companies, the percentage of those who plan to raise prices is many times greater. But this is unlikely to keep prices down in Russia. After all, manufacturers have a lot of reason to explain the growth, from the fall of the ruble and rising fuel prices to the rising gas prices for industry. So it's unlikely that the artificial ban will keep prices low. And you can also bring into the discussion here raising interest rates to try and keep inflation in check. There's all sorts of things that the Russians have been doing to try and stabilize the economy. The use of reserves, so on and so forth. And they've done a pretty good job for a year and a half, the Russians, but how long can they artificially keep the Russian economy kind of operating in a way that looks good to the outside world, I wonder. Now, onto a completely different subject here. Belarus propagandists openly admit on television that Belarus kidnaps children from occupied parts of Kherson, quote, as usual, with joy and drive. Just my goodness. So this is happening now. Recently, the Belarusian Red Cross was sort of cut off in the International Red Cross. I guess I don't know what the word is, but the network of International Red Cross, because he was involved in that, or at least seemed to be okay with it happening, or whatever. The guy in charge of the Belarusian Red Cross. So that was all really controversial. Yeah, it appears that Belarus are indeed part of that child stealing thing. And again, pay attention to these propagandists. They are giving a sense of what Russians really want, and they are usually, it would appear, sanctioned by the Kremlin. So Sergei Mironov, Russian politician, believes here propagandist is a politician, believes it's time for Russia to claim its rights to Alaska. Quote, did you want a new world order? Here you go. Venezuela is annexing its 24th state, Guyana Essequibo. This is happening right under the nose of the once great hegemon USA. All that's left is for Mexico to take back Texas and the rest of the territories. It's time for Americans to think about their future and also about Alaska. Alaska for Russia, with the Russian flag next to Alaska, he tweets. So when you look at people who are so the latest data was 50% of just about 50% of Republicans think the US are giving too much aid to Ukraine. And you're thinking, at the same time, Russia is saying, how about Alaska? And saying, look, if you can go back to Crimea 2014. If you don't do anything about that, that gives people permission to do more of the same. So then Russia invade in 2022. And then Venezuela look at what's going on in Ukraine and thinking, US, who are one of our sort of neighbours, are not doing an awful lot over there at the moment. We'll help ourselves to Guyana, thank you very much. People learn, people look at what's going on and learn from that. It's just, the world is a very different place now than it was, well, certainly 10 years ago. Right, Tim White reports on yet another emergency landing of a passenger jet in Russia today. Wow, every day this is happening. A Russia Airlines Airbus A319 with 111 passengers on board reportedly had problems after takeoff and immediately returned to Mineralne Vody Airport in Stavropol region. And there's imagery on board for that, and it looks a bit hairy with the old gas mask, the oxygen mask coming down from above. Yeah. And that is, there was something else. I've lost it. Actually, that's a really interesting article. Just seen that. The Financial Review will be talking about that in the next piece with regard to potential Australian aid to Ukraine. Anyway, thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share. Really appreciate all your support. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon.